Manny, let's get to it. Who is your biggest winner, or at least your first winner? Are these ranked, or are these just the ones that stood out to you as the guys who have won the early portal window?
All right. Well, all of these teams, when we picked 5 winners, are ranked in the top 10 of the 247 Sports Transfer Portal rankings. So they are
Mm-hmm.
considered leaders in the field. And number one is the number one team in the transfer portal rankings. That would be LSU. Look, they're coming off an 8-4 season. They got the number one class so far. No star quarterback in the class, but at least there's an experienced young starter in Michael Van Buren, 7-game starter last season at Mississippi State. Eight
And
of
it's
the
worth noting they have Nussmeier still coming back.
Yeah, they do have Nussmeier coming back, so this is kind of a waiting in place type of position. And then you got 8 of the 14 commitments that they signed are top 100 players, including former ACC Rookie of the Year Pat Payton from Florida State, the number 2 ranked player in the portal according to 247. There are 9 players in all who have started at least 7 games in this class, including all ACC third-team cornerback Mansour Delani from Virginia Tech, former Kentucky receiver Barian Brown.
I like
And
him a lot. Super
yeah,
fast.
good class. And on the flip side, they only have 3 guys that they lost that are kind of noteworthy. That's Sage Ryan, who's a starter at safety. You have C.J. Daniels, who went to Miami, receiver, and 5-star edge rusher Deshaun Womack, who just hadn't really played much. But all in all, a pretty good haul for Brian Kelly.
So with LSU, like my first thought here is LSU finally like paying up in a way that they haven't been? Because we've had Brian Kelly multiple times publicly say like, we're not going to overpay for these guys, or we can't afford to pay for certain guys. They wanted some defensive linemen in the spring portal coming out of last season that they didn't get. You have Brian Kelly putting up his own money essentially to say fans can match up to, I think it was like $1 million or something like that.
And they had another anonymous donor that matched up to $1 million as well.
Yeah, so like
by the way.
He's putting it to the like Tiger Fund, I think, or something like that, and then the matching is going to NIL. So like Brian Kelly's like really trying to make this happen. And to get this kind of talent, I mean the numbers we don't necessarily specifically know, but it feels like LSU is now catching up in this space in a way that they maybe weren't before. Manny, I mean, have you heard anything about LSU and the way people view them right now?
Well, I think first of all, you got to spend money to make money, right? That's the way these guys are thinking in college football, and I think ultimately, they know that LSU was their fans were disappointed last season, so a lot of these players went into the portal thinking, hey man, like I've got a good enough resume. These guys are reaching out to me. Let's see what I can sort of get out of the bank fund over there at LSU and cash in. And I think all the guys that they signed so far are either high upside guys or guys that have played a ton. And so to me, I look at what LSU has done to this point, and I think without question they smell of desperation. Like we're going to spend the money, and we're going to kind of go all in here because Brian Kelly needs to have a good season next year.
I think you got to spend money to make money is just on the seal of college sports for the last 50 years. So LSU, by the way, keeps Harold Perkins around for another year. Odd decision on his part, I think. Garrett Nussmeier, I think I understand another year as a starter. I generally am a believer in that the biggest correlator of NFL success is career starts, and I think if he has another year, he could really do well for himself. But I do think the interesting part of this is how the house settlement and that money and the collective money will interact. I think it's going to be different on every campus. I think nobody's really sure exactly where that money is coming from. Everybody's talking about, we're going to get to $20.5 million. I don't think everybody's going to get there. I think everybody intends to get there in the Power Four at least. But I think there's some denial happening there. Chris, you might know a little bit more about the ins and outs of that. But the idea that all the Power Four are going to magically come up with $20 million out of their budget, I think people want to believe they're going to do that, and then they're just not going to be able to come up with that.
Well, that's what we have to see. I mean, football is probably going to be like 13, 14, 15 million of that 20.5-ish million. Title IX, is it going to apply? Nobody's really sure. It seems like everybody's like, all right, we're going to put most of it toward football, and if we get in trouble, we get in trouble, but it's unlikely to happen. So that's why this specific portal is so weird, and the big money you're seeing thrown around and put out there, because there's just more money out there than ever before, because now schools are spending more money on players than they currently are. So it's a great time to, that's one of the reasons the portal is so crazy right now, is because you have more of an incentive to jump in because there's more money everywhere. Everybody's got more money right now. And the collectives, I've talked to some coaches about this too. The collectives like don't totally know what their future is. So they're kind of unloading everything right now and signing guys right now before House goes into effect, and then figuring out what their place is after that. So we thought a couple years into after a couple years, the portal market will settle down, the COVID waiver kids will phase out, and it'll go down. It hasn't happened because every year the environment is different. And here, this is yet another one. Plus, you have the JUCO kids in there as well.
Manny, let's get back on track. Who is your second winner?
All right, my second team here on the list is somebody that our Sam Kahn wrote about. Sam did a really nice in-depth piece in The Athletic a couple weeks back on Texas Tech. Not a team that you necessarily would think about being a big spender on players up until this point, but they are spending a lot of money. They have the number 2 class in the 247 ranking, 17 transfers, including 7 top 100 players, 236 combined starts between the 17 editions. So a lot of experience there. 10 guys were full-time starters in 2024, including all Sun Belt first-team tight end Terrence Carter from Louisiana, all MAC second-team receiver Reggie Virgil of Miami, Ohio. They got 2 starting left tackles from other teams, Will Jados of Miami of Ohio and Howard Sampson from North Carolina. They also got a top 10 player overall in Hunter Zambrano from Illinois State, an offensive lineman with 27 career starts. So they really loaded up on the offensive side with difference makers. The defense also picked up 2 full-time starters at cornerback in Dante Balfour from Charlotte and Bryce Pollock from Mississippi State. 3 defensive linemen that are really good players, Anthony Holmes, Lee Hunter, and Romello Height from Houston, UCF, and Georgia Tech, respectively. So, and really only 1 loss on the other side of the ball, and that's former 5-star receiver Micah Hudson, who was part of the 24 class. So they lost the 5-star recruit that they were all excited about a year ago, but they went out, spent a lot of money, and I think brought in arguably the best class. I mean, them or LSU, you could make the argument for.
Yeah.
And I will say on the Hudson issue, I talked to people around Texas Tech last year. It wasn't that he wasn't doing what he was supposed to. It wasn't that like he was a bust. He just couldn't really get on the field for them. And that is like, I know Texas Tech fans are freaking out. I know people love the stars and the rankings, but like their receivers were fine last year. And I think they'll be fine without Hudson. You know, maybe miss him more in 2 or 3 years, and maybe that's not always that case, but you know, they should still be fine. Manny, who is your next big winner?
All right, the next team on the list was actually number 1 last year in the transfer portal, and that would be the portal king himself, Lane Kiffin. He's back at it. Rebels have the number 3 class, 15 commitments so far, 6 top 100 recruits. It's a mix of proven starters with high-end blue chippers from the last couple cycles. Among the 6 full-time starters, Sun Belt first-team linebacker Jaden Yards from Marshall, former Oklahoma State receiver Dejon Stribling. The ex-blue chippers are headlined by defensive lineman Bear Alexander from USC, who's actually been, I think he's played for every school now. I think this is for Bear Alexander.
I will say, you know, people want to scoff at Bear Alexander, but they did get Walter Nolan playing pretty awesome, whatever it's worth. And he had not been great at A&M, and he was really, really good at so like Bear Alexander, you know, becoming the next like Walter Nolan is not the craziest thing. So anyway,
they got a couple more guys just to mention quickly. Caleb Odom from Alabama, big time tight end receiver type prospect, who was a big signing last year for the Crimson Tide, comes over to Ole Miss. Only 2 starters lost via the portal among 15 departures. One of them, Micah Pettis, starting right tackle, who's at Florida State, and cornerback Jadon Kennedy, who's got 31 career starts. I think he's still available in the portal.
So the Bear Alexander thing, I keep going back and forth. I'm like, is this guy good or not? Like he and so I asked Antonio Morales, our USC writer. I was like, what's the deal with Bear Alexander? Like is he good? Like, what's the deal? And Antonio put it like, he really flashes, but you have to keep him engaged. And so I think that's the real, can you keep him focused and on task and doing all that kind of stuff? And like you said, they did that with Walter Nolan. So maybe
I think Walter Nolan is a really good
comparison
because the knocks on him, obviously, you know, Walter Nolan was, I think he was the number 1 overall recruit. It was, you know, he was the top 5, top 3 guy. Anyway, but the knocks you'd hear in the recruiting process was, he doesn't like hard coaching, and his motor is like not great. I didn't see any of that at Ole Miss last year. He looked unbelievable. And so, you know, flash, but you got to keep him engaged. It sounds like some similar stuff there. You know, I think there's some coaching staff dynamics where it can work and some where it can't. I think in a lot of ways, Ole Miss has earned the benefit of the doubt in some of this.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, I think it probably helps him that nobody's expecting him to come in and just be like, Walter Nolan or the savior of the D line like immediately. But I think you got a guy like Nick Saban always likes to talk about big people. There's only so many of the 300 plus guys who can move. And yeah, you got to make it production. Yeah, you got to get the technique. But like that body type of, hey, I'm a big dude who can move, there just aren't very many of them. And Barry Alexander is one of them. And when you have that, you have upside. So we'll see how that plays out. It should be interesting. Manny, who's your fourth winner? I like this one. This is one of my favorites on here. I like a lot of these dudes.
I'm not sure anybody has spent more money in acquiring talent between the high school recruiting and the transfer portal than Auburn. I think they're the number 4 team on my list here. Although again, arguably could finish top 3. Even though they're not in the top 3 right now, I think they could finish top 3 because I don't think their work is done yet. 14 commitments, 6 top 100 ranked players, including Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma, the big headliner. Eric Singleton, star receiver at Georgia Tech. They got MAC first team cornerback Rayon Strader from Miami of Ohio. Virginia Tech left tackle Xavier Chaplin, starter there, and then USC right tackle Mason Murphy. So 8 of the pickups have at least 2 years of eligibility left, which I think is key in all of this, guys. It's not just one-hit wonders. And among the 19 departures, the only starter who played at least 6 games last season was safety Caleb Woodson. So didn't lose anybody big and brought in a lot of big guys.
Mm-hmm. So when Auburn was struggling this year, and Hugh Freeze just throwing his quarterback under the bus, and everybody's pointing out, hey, Hugh Freeze has the same record as Brian Harsin right now. He's doing the same thing that Brian Harsin did. And people wondering, hey, is Auburn going to make a change again? That was never going to happen because the talent coming into Auburn right now is at a completely different level. Brian Harsin could not recruit at Auburn. Not only does Auburn have a really good transfer portal class coming in, they have signed the number 6 recruiting class in the country. So, they are doing everything that they need to do to upgrade that talent level. Now, quarterback is the problem. Quarterback was an issue for most of this year. Is Jackson Arnold that guy? I don't know. I don't know about Jackson Arnold because I don't know what the heck Oklahoma was thinking with the way they handled them this year.
Yeah,
it was a complete unknown.
I'm holding my Jackson Arnold stock. I don't love it. But again, I think because it was just the status quo for the whole year, people forgot that every Oklahoma receiver was hurt last year. Name an Oklahoma receiver and they missed half the season or all the season and then all transferred out. So he wasn't working with a lot. And I think that really does matter. And he's going to have the exact opposite at Auburn. They're going to have some targets for him. Who was the other receiver that they added besides? I mean, obviously you got Cam Coleman, but they added another receiver. Oh, Eric Singleton. Yeah, from Georgia Tech. Mm-hmm. So I love that pickup.
And Horatio Fields from Wake Forest, by the way. Horatio started 12 games in his career, and this past season was productive at Wake Forest.
So I like this class. I like the pickups, and I think Jackson Arnold. We'll see what he is or isn't, but I think he's going into a much better situation than what he had at Oklahoma, which was the worst possible situation. He was your 5th winner in the transfer portal.
All right, I didn't go, with the exact order on the 247 team website here because we do have some other teams that I think that are in the top 10 that are worth talking about. So I went with Florida State, who's got the 7th ranked class right now. Skip Texas A&M and Mississippi State because I think those teams lost a little bit more. But Florida State's class, Mike Norvell badly needed to have a good transfer class, and I think they're sort of on the right path now. They got a top 20 recruiting class. They kind of finished strong with some unexpected pickups in the recruiting class. And then they come out and they have 4 top 100 transfer players, including Deuce Robinson from USC, very talented former 5-star receiver. He's the headline playmaker. And then, of course, they got some Nebraska guys, including James Williams, the edge rusher. They brought in the defensive coordinator from Nebraska to come in and as one of the 2 new coordinator hires. They got Wake Forest center Luke Pettibone and Micah Pettis from Ole Miss, who was the starting right tackle. They also added Gunnar Hansen from Vanderbilt, who was the left tackle, and ex-UCF left tackle Adrian Medley. So 4 guys on the offensive line that were starters elsewhere, including tight end Randy Pittman from UCF. they're all going to be out there to protect Thomas Castellanos, who takes over, obviously, for DJ Uyunglele in this Gus Malzahn offense. Of the 24 departures, only 2 guys were full-time starters. So, yes, they lost 24 guys, most in the ACC, but only 2 of those guys were regular starters. That's Pat Payton, who went to LSU, and then Marvin Jones Jr., the legacy recruit, who is still in the transfer portal.
Yeah,
that's why
when you're
Randy Pittman sounds like a corn-fed 53-year-old electrician in Oklahoma.
And that's why you had Florida State, like you said. It's not just who you got in the portal; it's who you didn't lose. And Florida State didn't lose that much. To me, this all circles around Thomas Castellanos. Like, he lost the starting job at Boston College to Grayson James, and then quit on the team during the season. We want to talk about the Cam Ward discussion we're going to have later. This was even worse to me. But also Gus Malzahn, the offense coordinator there now, he's kind of lost his touch with quarterbacks for a bit. It feels like he hasn't. It didn't really work with KJ Jefferson, UCF, and what they were trying there. So it's been a weird couple of years for Gus, and all these other guys are good players and everything, but and DJU wasn't the only problem at Florida State this year, but you have to get the quarterback right, or else I don't know how much of the rest of this is going to work. Jordan Travis, yes, that team was full of NFL players, but Jordan Travis was really underrated for how much he kept Florida State on schedule and made plays when things broke down and didn't make too many killer mistakes. So I don't know. To me, for Florida State, it comes down to, can you get the most out of Castellanos and Gus Malzahn? Because this is going to be a big change for Mike Norvell not calling the plays anymore. So I'm still kind of iffy on how big of a turnaround this means for Florida State. I still can't believe the fall. The fall from 13-0 to this year's terrible season. It might be a longer road back if they don't get quarterback right.
Chris, this is some your Gus Malzahn take is some John Rice Plumlee slander. Good player, they got a lot out of him. I will say, Manny, here's my problem with Florida State is it seems like there's an evaluation issue, and in the portal with the speed dating aspect of it, evaluation is very, very difficult. And I think Mike Norvell got a lot of credit for Johnny Wilson and for Keon Coleman and Jared Verse. But you have to correct me if I'm wrong. It feels like there's a lot more misses, and I'm not talking about just this year. A lot more misses than hits in the portal. So you add all these guys, and I'm kind of like Deuce Robinson, I'm worried. I'm worried for the Noles here. That I think a lot of these look good on paper, and when you get them out on the field, I don't know. They're going to be 2-10. I'm not as in love with this as the recruiting rankings might be.
Right. That's a fair take. I mean, look, they to me, what they did last year was they took a lot of ex-Alabama and ex-Georgia guys who were 4- and 5-star recruits, and they had a different approach. That was like, we're gonna bank on these guys developing into something here, and that didn't work out. Now, when you look at this haul, I mean, 196 combined starts. Most of these guys, counting the number now, I think there's 9 guys with double-digit career starts. So these are dudes who have played elsewhere. I think last year it was more of a group of guys who hadn't played that you were hoping would develop into something.
That's a good point because, before last year, they were hitting on the portal better than anybody. Almost every portal guy they brought in would turn out to get some all ACC honors those first couple of years, and then last year completely fell apart. That might be why. That might be the strategy. So bringing in guys with experience, maybe you're right. Maybe that's a key. We'll see.